Episode 15, California versus Norway. This episode is dedicated to Cynthia Chan, Becky Beers, Tanya Cortez, the Leibdahl family, and the Ogni family too. Several years ago, someone I met equated California to being a lot like Norway, meaning, after several discussions, this person stated California was just like Norway, clearly in the pejorative sense because the cited commonalities included socialism/communism, high taxes, government overreach into everything, and higher cost of living. At first glance, comparing a Pacific Ocean bordering state to a Norwegian/North Sea bordering nation seemed like a stretch. Is it? Let's look at these two entities. California is a state as defined by New Oxford American Dictionary as an organized political community or area forming part of a federal republic. This is a state that's compliant with the United States Constitution, Article 4, Section 3, Clause 1, aka the Admissions Clause, which means it lacks the sovereignty needed to defend its borders per the U.S. Constitution, Article 4, Section 4. There are 238 people per square mile, or 98 people per square kilometer. Higher taxes? Well, the state overall, government-wise, is underfunded because it doesn't collect enough taxes based on 1, revenue shortfalls, and 2, bonds issued and sold to fund different projects. And per Ballotpedia.org, they basically maintain about 6.8% debt to gross domestic product ratio. Higher taxes? Sales tax is about 8.82% as of this year per taxfoundation.org. Vehicle registration/tax fees are dependent on sales price of vehicles. And the income tax for the state, not federal, is up to 13.3% per franchise tax california.gov if you make over $1 million per year. The economy? You could say it's expensive when you compare gasoline prices compared to Arizona, Idaho, Nevada, and Oregon prices, and higher utility costs thanks to a variety of factors such as forest fires that got started by an electrical problem somewhere in Northern California. Crime is definitely driving some revenue-generating businesses out of the state. Look at Westfield and what they decided to do in terms of defaulting on their mortgage on a big mall that they had in San Francisco. Earnings per capita is about $41,000 per capita per census.gov. Natural resources. According to the United States Department of Agriculture, California is the number one producer of produce or agricultural outputs, right, out of all U.S. 50 states. The government type? Well, it's a bicameral government in the sense that you have a Senate as well as the Assembly, but it doesn't really mean anything when majority of the politicians are part of one political party. So, for example, according to Ballotpedia.org, 78.3% of the elected politicians are Democrats, which means they are 21.7% away from becoming a unitary or one-party state. Historically speaking, and this is thanks to National Park Services.gov, California joined the United States Union as a free state, as a 31st state as of 1850, but the state also had some sympathies to slave owners. And for more details, go look up yourselves. Culture. The state population is made up of immigrants, based on how it was originally a Mexican territory, initially taken over by the Spanish, then part of Mexico, then it became part of the U.S. the United States, and so forth. Language. Although English is primarily used on road signs, it's a multilingual language system. And I say this because when you look at an election ballot, there are so many. The election ballot is printed in so many different languages. You can practically use the basic instructions on the cover, the front and the back, practically as a Rosetta Stone. Foods. Well, you got See's Candies, which was actually founded by Canadians, and also Ghirardelli, which was Ghirardelli Square, founded by an Italian immigrant who also their chocolates. Their quality is so good that they are sold in other parts of the United States, aside from California. Go visit Prescott, Arizona, for an example. although there's good stuff that seems to be made in California, such as In-N-Out burgers, no, not really, fat burgers, and so forth. The stuff that really defines California culturally is stuff that's culturally appropriated from other cultures. So, for example, good Mexican food such as, yes, Tobacco beers, as with Tanya Cortez, King Taco and its fish taco, in addition to El Cholo and its great chimichangas in downtown LA, as well as good dim sum, as well as good pho in San Francisco and also in Monterey Park, California. Let's look at Norway. Norway, it's a kingdom. Kingdom is defined as a country, state, or territory that's ruled by a king or queen. It has a parliament too. It basically has sovereignty to defend its borders because it's responsible to its own people, and it is its own kingdom. The population density, I think it's 17 per square mile or 43 per square kilometer. Now, okay, you have to keep in mind, not all of Norway is adequate for building or living on. There's rocks in many places, and for examples of this, go visit the fjords. Norway has even higher taxes compared to California. A vehicle tax, or since I don't know of any cars that are actually made inside Norway, in order to import a car for use and register in Norway, a variety of taxes that you lumped together. For, let's say if you look at a 2013 Volkswagen gasoline-based engine Jetta, just for the import tax, or the import part plus the carbon emissions tax and all those details put together, you're going to pay about $10,200 US dollars in equivalency. They don't have a sales tax; they have a value-added tax, which is 25% of whatever it is you're buying. So if you're buying something for $1, then you have to pay 25 cents for the tax. The income tax at the national level or at the kingdom level is 17.5% if you make 1.5 million Norwegian kroners or above. The economy, the country has the oil revenue. I think, last year they generated about 1.5 trillion kroners, or about 140 million US dollars, which is about $10 million short of California's current state debts. And this is based on barrels.com. Earnings per capita, it's about twice of California, or at about $84,000 US dollars equivalent. They actually have a higher debt to their GDP ratio at 15%. Their natural resources, yes, you got fish, you got salmon. Although they actually have been exporting more mackerel to Japan than salmon last year. Oil, petroleum oil, to a point because it all runs out at some point. And the country, per UN.org, produces 97% of its own electricity needs due to hydroelectric power. You look at the government type. Yes, there's a king. However, parliament, it's not one or two parties. There are 9 distinct parties that all have to work together to form a coalition in order to make a coalition government whenever there's a prime minister that's basically voted out due to lack of competence and so forth. History, well, you can find several others. You could go do your own research. Okay, Norway became its own independent country from Sweden as of 1905. Technically called dissolution with the Swedish kingdom. The culture is primarily Scandinavian. Yes, Odin, Thor, and then around 8th century, AD onward, the culture adopted Christianity. And these notes are thanks to Hurtigruten.com. Relatively speaking, it's a homogeneous society. Although 60% per SSB.Norway are immigrants. Immigrants meaning they come from outside the parts of Norway, so you could have Swedes, Finns, although they really don't speak Scandinavian language, it's more Indo-Hungarian. You can say god dag, or there, I think, or in Finland, in Suomi, you would say terve. English is also is used as a working language in the cities, as well as for diplomacy purposes. No love for French. Foods. Aquavit. Okay, it's a liquid diet. Linea Aquavit, let's see. I think it's made by, there's a brand made by Lindstrom's. It goes well essentially in the summertime when you are having it with a good meal, especially with reindeer meat. Yes, reindeer meat. It's actually quite good. I need to point out, for the sake of my Norwegian relatives who are living in California, as well as back in Norway too, family, friends, and so forth, Norwegian meatballs are bigger than Swedish meatballs. Hurdy-gurdy, bork, bork, bork. Cheese. Yes, I think it was a Norwegian carpenter who actually invented the cheese slicer. Look at it, one of their famous cheeses is called brown cheese, or in the language, brunost. Strange thing about this cheese, maybe this is why I like brown cheese so much. It's actually more popular in South Korea than it is in Norway in terms of sales volume. Norwegian chocolate. Yes, they do make their own chocolate, especially the Freya brand. I'm sorry. Belgian chocolate, especially the Galère chocolate, is a lot better. Okay, at some point, there should be a little lady, hi little lady, somewhere in the nearby Hornindal, that's Norway, who should be screaming, "Nei!" at some point. So let's see, as soon as she recognizes this and starts screaming, since it's about 8,262 kilometers from Hornindal to Temecula, California, at 346 meters per second under ideal conditions. Ideal conditions meaning 25 degrees at sea level, 1 atmospheric pressures, 1 ATM, if you will. Thus, her screaming should arrive in about 6 hours, 39 minutes, and 59 seconds. Lutefisk. Lutefisk, that's right. It's whitefish that's preserved in burnt lye. It's actually really good when served with the sides. It's actually not so popular in Norway due to refrigeration, but very popular at Sons of Norway conventions in the United States. Let's go back to this comparative comparison between California and Norway. Are they really a lot like each other? So is Norway anything like a socialist/communist country? Absolutely not from a cultural nor from a governmental point of view, because they have a kingdom. And California is, because it's approaching the one-party state from a governmental function ruling point of view. This is something that the Soviet Union, China, and Cuba achieved, because Norway is a king. Hail to the king. Norwegians pay actually more than Californians with respect to taxes that they pay to the state or to the nation's government, and they do so without too much of a fuss, relatively speaking, because as they see where the money goes to. It goes to collective benefits, including retirement pension as well. You try to raising, if California state government, I'm sure this is a dream for them, if they tried to raise the state sales tax to 25%, let's see, yeah, I would stay out of the neighborhood on that if that were to happen. Which country or which entity is more gets away with government overreach? Well, that's Norway, because they're their own kingdom. Since California citizens, if they disagree with what the state decides to do with them, they can always go to the United States Supreme Court and occasionally win. High cost of living. Go buy a Big Mac in Stavanger. Compare that price translated using xrates.com to what a Big Mac would cost in San Francisco, if you can find a McDonald's that's open these days. Do your own math there. In the end, what this means is, in order for California to be anything like Norway, in the truest, most fair, objective sense of the word, they would have to leave the United States Union. They would have to fund its internal costs necessary to maintain sovereignty, which means collecting more taxes from people, including fully funding its military so that there wouldn't be another Rodney King riots that would require the United States Marine Corps to participate again, and electing someone as king, as well as encouraging a coalition government, which would mean it would need to have actually more than 2, maybe 9, political parties who all have to cooperate with each other at some point, like Norway. So therefore, the odds of California being like Norway is not a snowball's chance in Death Valley. All right, here's the Kevin Bacon game. Norway, the one connection that Norway has with California is through Japan. Norway gets credit for introducing the salmon sushi to California by 3 degrees of separation. Per 2015 NPR.org interview with a Norwegian and several Japanese people, Bjorn Erik Olsen sold salmon as a sushi grade salmon, I think about 5,000 pounds or kilos worth, to Nishi Rei, in order to have Nishi Rei sell it to the Japanese sushi markets as sushi grade material. And it became so it actually got accepted and became very popular to the point where it started becoming very popular in California. You go to any let's see, sushi restaurant, especially the ones that do serve up sushi on the conveyor belts in Little Tokyo, for example. Go to a place called the Frying Fish. They'll have salmon, let's see, some salmon sushi there. So therefore, Californians, when you meet a Norwegian, and especially if you're a fan of salmon sushi, please tell them Tusen takk. Thanks. Until next time.